Welcome to the Phantom Zone.
And now, comics.
Hello, this is And Now Comics. I'm Luke Gonzalez. Joining me this time is John Seiler.
Some people call the House of X of the podcast.
Connor Irving.
I'm counting on the House of X to hopefully be good.
And Ryan Fretz.
Doomsday Clock will never reveal itself before the year's over.
I was really hoping someone was going to be like, and I'm the power of 10 of the podcast.
I was waiting for for Lou to do that. Sorry.
We will talk about House and Power of X. There's like very few news stories. We started off before recording talking about the Garfield thing, which I guess it's probably
This
the
is
biggest
news
story.
to me.
Yeah, so Garfield was sold to Viacom, who also owns Nickelodeon, or it's in the process of being sold, I guess.
Basically, Jim Davis, the company that owns the rights to Garfield, has sold like his entire company to Viacom. So it's like not only like Garfield, that's like Garfield and Friends. That's that, and also that really bad like Anchor show. If you
Oh yeah.
if you know that.
Yeah, I'm looking. They already are doing. I guess before this, a deal was already announced. They're already planning on doing a new animated series for Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I don't know what that brand is in 2019, like outside of the meme, but yeah, I mean, it can't be any worse than the last, 20 years of Garfield. Or like, they've had like really bad animated shows, they've had really bad games.
Again, like I didn't realize until you said it before you started recording that they bought TMNT in 2009, and they have done great things with that property.
Yeah, but I feel like there's more. I feel like there's more story potential for the TMNT than Garfield.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's a controversial statement.
I guess more it's like I think that there is a place for Garfield on like Nickelodeon, like for kids.
Oh yeah.
And like it's still like a basic premise of it's a cat, a lazy cat, and then the couple of characters around him, and then the really inept dumb owner. So it's
one of the worst characters in comics.
Which is funny because it's the guy. It's him. Like, isn't it? It's the creator.
Yeah, John Arbuckle sucks.
Yeah. My favorite is, have you ever seen when they remove Garfield from panels?
I was just gonna bring that up because those are some of the funniest comics.
It just looks like John's a schizophrenic, and he's just like
crazy, lonely man.
That's just talking to himself, because like half the panels end with him not saying anything, so it's just like a panel of him talking, responding to nothing, and then silence,
and then a face.
Yeah. Jim Davis like sued to get that stopped, right?
Really?
What?
Yeah.
How can you get it stopped? It's like satire.
Well, like that, but that's the thing. It's like he tried suing it because he didn't think it was, transformative enough. To the point that even like when they reprint. Like, they did printings of Garfield without Garfield, and Jim Davis made them put the original strips to the opposite side of the panel without Garfield. And it's just like, you're ruining the joke, Jim.
You don't fucking get it.
I mean, like, and maybe that's a thing. Garfield is a really... Like, Garfield, the property, is much like Garfield the cat. It's just lazy and bloated and dated, and maybe with like, because it's like there are a lot of cartoonists that actually like really love drawing Garfield and doing like stuff with like the Garfield brand, and maybe this animated show is a way to get like a fresh new take and eyes on the Garfield in a way that you're able to get a new audience with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe they do a Halloween special where they do all of the Garfield.
I'm sorry, Johns.
That'd be funny.
Just like a horror Garfield. I would love that.
Which is funny because there's all those eldritch horror Garfield like art pieces, and they're still not as kind of scary as when you're a kid and you read Garfield Alone.
Yeah, well,
Do people here know the Garfield Alone strip?
I don't think
no.
I've never heard of that.
Okay, so Garfield Alone is an actual literal Garfield strip that ran for a week, like when I was a kid, or even probably like before very young. It's basically a comic where Garfield wakes up and like John is gone, and then he realizes like Odie and Normal and everyone else is gone, and that the house that he's living is condemned. He's all alone, and this comic takes place over the span of like 4 days. And the fifth comic is he wakes up from this nightmare, and he sees John, he sees Odie, and he hugs them, and he's like, "Oh, thankful I'm not alone," or whatever. And it's basically is the creepypasta, like the original creepypasta, where it's like, "Oh, was Garfield actually alone? Is the dream at the end basically him like thinking about the good times that he did have, and that's the comic from now on?"
Oh,
But yeah,
wow.
Garfield Alone is an actual literal Jim Davis written and drawn strip that came out.
Huh. That's interesting. I'd never heard of that. That sounds way more horror and interesting than anything Jim Davis has actually ever done.
Yeah, maybe he just had a bad week, and he
Yeah, just a case of the Mondays.
yeah. Which they announced that Garfield deal on a Monday.
That's why he hates Mondays.
Yeah, I do think that there's stuff that they can obviously do, but like it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I don't know how much kids actually know the character.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, you posted up the Garfield Alone strip.
Yeah, I found I literally just Googled Garfield Alone.
Yeah, it's wild. Like if you're listening to this and you haven't read the strip, I would recommend going and reading it.
Okay, I'll check that out. Yeah, well, mandatory reading besides X-Men now. Garfield Alone. Who would have fucking thought?
Oh man, yeah. It's an interesting thing. Like, I think it makes sense to try to do something with that IP for Nickelodeon, like compared to anybody else.
I mean, what is Jim Davis going to do with Garfield in 2019?
Yeah.
Does he even know where he is at this point?
I mean, like at this point, he could just sell off the brand, just live. I don't even think he's making. I don't even think he's still making Garfield strips.
No, I don't think so.
Well, do newspapers still exist?
Yeah, fair enough.
It's funny because you still see newspaper strips that are continuing. I mean, I think one of the most famous ones currently is oh my god, what
is it? Beetle something?
No, I'm trying to think of that comic I really like about the girl.
Oh yeah, we talked about it. It was really funny.
I
can't remember. I totally forgot. We talked about that like several months ago. Well, while you're talking or while you're thinking, just one of the other news stories, which I think is interesting. So, one of the books that was supposed to come out this week was Wildcats, which got canceled. I don't think we talked about this last time, but it got canceled. It was supposed to be out this month. I think it was supposed to be out like last week or this week. And it was supposed to be a 6-issue run, and it just got bumped. And Warren Ellis has basically talked about that. Like, as far as he knows, it's canceled. Hopefully, he'll come out another date. But yeah,
Unfortunate.
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of what happened with Batman and the Outsiders, where they just canceled the issues that they had in the can, and then they resolicited it for months later. And
yeah,
I don't know.
That just came. I think they're like at issue 2 of that run, and that was supposed to come out a while ago.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like Warren Ellis has a lot of, he's not doing anything. Like, he has like a bunch of other projects on his plate, and it's possible that, he delayed Wildcats so he can finish up all these other engagements.
Well, I mean, if he's that busy, it would make sense to start kind of clearing the palette, so to speak, so he could kind of organize and release stuff in a steadier manner, I guess, and like work on other stuff at the same time instead of cramming everything in and kind of half-assing projects.
I mean, and also DC for the last 2 years, it's just Shazam's late. A lot of the Young Animal, like Doom Patrol was late. Doomsday Clock is late. So maybe they're just trying to stop having too many books be late at a time.
Mm-hmm. Because what it ends up doing, which is like, it's happened to me last week, where it's like, oh, like there'll be like 3 weeks where I'm not picking up anything, and then there's like 1 week where I have like 7 books, just because everything's been delayed so wonkily.
Yeah, that's like last week. I'm still picking up books that I missed because I just didn't have the money, or like I just didn't want to buy them all at once because I'm not going to read them.
I guess the only big story I found was like a couple of like hiring changes at DC. So I guess the bigger one to talk about at all is that DC hired Jonah Wayland as like the new VP of marketing. He is the guy that created comic book resources like way back in the day.
Yeah, I remember you posted something like that.
Yeah, so it's just like an interesting thing. He sold that company a long time ago, but kind of weird that like somebody who was in the kind of media industry for comic books is now like the marketing guy for like the number 1 or number 2 biggest comic book company.
Yeah, that is a bit weird.
Yeah, but otherwise, yeah, so Ryan posted this Deadpool thing. It's really like, I think people are kind of running with a very tiny quote.
Yeah, so they got like a headline.
Yeah, so because I guess the guy who's doing Deadpool, David, like worked on Hobbs and Shaw, or it's his new movie, and I guess was asked about it, and the quote is just, it's rated R, or like rated R, so that's not necessarily the MCU brand, but he doesn't necessarily need to be R, and Disney doesn't necessarily need to only make PG-13 movies.
Yeah,
and that's all he said.
And that's a truthful statement. Like, Deadpool as a brand does not need to be rated R to be good. And I don't think Disney necessarily only wants to make PG-13 superhero films. Like, those are 2 possibly truthful statements. And the idea that the headline is Deadpool 2 director says Deadpool 3 doesn't necessarily need to be rated R. And, like, that's a half-truth. And this is why I also don't go to comic book news, because this is also the same site I talked to you guys, like, before we started recording, that also reported on that Bully 2 news that was, like, making the rules rounds today. That was basically, like, a guy from a YouTube channel says that he knows someone at Rockstar, which is the equivalent of the kid on the playground who says, my dad works at Nintendo and says they're going to do this thing.
Exactly. Which, like, I feel like I was talking to my brother the other day, catching up, and those sites, just the sites in general, I feel like it's, I'm trying to think of a way to describe it, but mostly what I come up with is, like, the comic book kind of genre stuff has turned into what, like, sports media has been for the last 10 years, where they're just, like, all headline grabs. Everything is a headline, and it's just clickbait. Like, that is the entire, like, comic book kind of geek genre thing, like news media has become, is just clickbait.
I think that's because it's like the major outlets out there, like CBR, Newsarama and Comic Book. Like, they're all about like trying to get like those clicks in, and so like sure, like that's why like anytime like I try and bring up stories for this podcast, I use like Boing Boing, I use Comics Beat, I use, when I have to, like, I use Bleeding Cool, like, even though, like, I think they're not as, like, I think they're kind of on the same level as the Newsarama, but, it's like, I try and, like, at least, bring up, like, a story that's being, like, corroborated through, like, many different sources, instead of just, like,
we heard a thing and we're going to report on it unscrupulously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's not even, like, unscrupulously, it's just, like, there's nothing there. Like, technically that headline is correct, but it is written in such a way that gives like no actual real meaning. So it's like it's lazy, it's manipulative writing.
Yeah.
Like, So, yeah, and that's kind of a problem in general with like we're saying, like with the entire. It's like online news in general, but a lot very, very bad in this specific genre of news. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else we want to talk about before we do like our dive into House and Power?
It's kind of half comic news, but DuckTales Remastered is leaving the digital storefront on August 8th. So, yeah, that's also why I don't believe in a digital console future. But if you wanted to buy the digital version of DuckTales Remastered, which is a pretty great game, get it before Friday, I believe. No, Thursday.
Yeah, that kind of goes into that. So Disney announced their pricing for their bundle for Hulu, ESPN, and Disney Plus, and it's going to be $13 a month to get all three.
Yeah, it's $12.99.
Yeah, it's $1. I think it's $1 more than I pay for Hulu right now without commercials.
So they're probably gonna have commercials.
Yeah.
Plus, with Hulu, you can always do like HBO and Stars. So like, you can basically cancel like your cable package because there's a lot of like add-ons you can do with Hulu to like increase your like whatever you're watching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will cancel Hulu, so and then do this. And I don't know, man. I guess like I watch like Around the Horn. That's about the only ESPN thing I watch. So
yeah, like which is funny because that is one of the shows like I super hate. Although it's not my most hated show on ESPN. That would be what's the stupid morning show? They used to have Skip Bayless. Now it's just Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman. First Take.
Yeah, I don't get Stephen. I get the appeal of Stephen A. Smith. I also don't get Stephen A. Smith.
So this is like super tangent. So Stephen A. Smith is a thing because, well, he's a thing on ESPN because it was originally him and Skip Bayless, who's one of the most hateable and hated like sports news guys. And it was literally like he had like every show that Skip Bayless does, he talks. It's him against like. It's like a talking head show, like the debate thing, but it's always like a younger black guy. So Skip Bayless went to Fox, and now he's talking with Shannon Sharp, who's like a former NFL player, Hall of Famer. But like the reason why Stephen A. Smith exists is because he wrote in New York for a long time and became friends with a couple of like New York basketball players, and then has continued to be friends. Specifically, he was like close with Kobe.
Ah.
So like he's like the super like number one NBA insider guy. But
NBA
he's also
insider, I'll get all your hot tips from Skip.
Yeah, so he's just like, and he just like talks a lot of shit. His Twitter is hilarious though, because he's like constantly like he will tweet about how he likes like big butts and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
he's
he
real open.
He is this like your quintessential like what do they call it? Not a hothead, a blowhard.
Blowhard, yeah.
Yeah.
That's from what you've told me, it sounds like a blowhard.
Yeah. The only thing on ESPN Plus I'll be interested in is because they have like the deal with the UFC. So like they have like some pay-per-view level stuff that'll be on there. But otherwise I'm like, I don't care. But it's part of it, so
I mean that's good. I mean
yeah, if you don't watch sports, like I get it. Like you're just kind of getting it with it. It's probably cheaper to get the whole bundle than to get two of the three.
Oh, it is 100%.
Actually, it'd be really cool if also Fox Sports was part of that deal. Because that means I get to watch SmackDown and like whatever like their new show is.
Fox Sports was not part of the deal to Disney.
It was everything but the news.
It was everything but news and sports.
Ooh.
That was one of the reasons how they danced around like monopoly stuff, because they don't have a monopoly on sports news.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of funny because like WWE took the place of UFC when UFC left Fox to go to ESPN.
What a weird jump.
They do that all the time. The UFC copies the WWE stuff a lot of the time. So
yeah, I mean, the UFC is just theatrics before people pummel the shit out of each other.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. We got like way off track. I would like if they bundled in like Marvel Unlimited to that.
Well, they may add that on as like an add-on package, like
'Cause that
how.
would be,
God, that'd be great.
yeah, like for an extra like $2 a month, you get Marvel Unlimited also. Like I think their subscription to Marvel Unlimited would skyrocket.
Well, that'd make me real jealous of you guys for a few minutes there.
But speaking of Marvel, why don't we talk about I would say it's probably like the biggest comic thing going on in a while, right? With House of X.
I mean,
Yeah.
like I think it's the biggest Marvel news right now.
I would say like it's definitely like been
on the
bigger
flip side,
than
do you think it's bigger than Doomsday Clock?
yes.
What happened to Doomsday Clock this time?
Except for the fact that we're like, where is Doomsday Clock?
Oh,
Yeah.
it's not out. Okay.
They are preparing the build-up for Doomsday Clock. Okay, the longer it waits, the bigger the anticipation, and the payoff will be amazing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like the last issue of Doomsday Clock, and it's just like basically the ending of Heroes in Crisis, like that big of a letdown? Can you imagine? Like a year goes by, and it's like
Well, not even
the
like
entire
2
run of
years.
Heroes in Crisis. Jeez.
I feel like at least like the bare minimum, Hickman writing House of X and Power of 10 is at least as big as when Morrison was writing X-Men.
Oh, I definitely think it's
Yeah, it's up
especially
there.
if you
And I
read, is it
and
Power
I-
of 10 or Power of X?
I
Power-
hear it's House of X and the Power of 10.
Yeah, like I just read Power of 10, and the way they structure that book, it makes
Okay.
it seem like it's meant to be Power of 10. Because everything's
Okay.
5.
Yeah, it's because in that one page, like the director's cut, they show 10 Omega Mutants, so that could be like referencing
Oh,
those
I
10.
didn't get the director's cut. Damn.
Well,
Oh.
and then it's also set like
It jumps
like
it's like
10
100
years,
years.
100 years, and 1,000
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, okay. It's okay. So I will stop saying Power of X. So, should we start talking about like specifically House of X first and then go to Power?
Beforehand, like I kind of want to preface this where
Mhm.
people have been like yes, it's probably the biggest X-Men story since Morrison, but like I also want to make like this addendum that's not to say that X-Men hasn't been good since like that Morrison run. Because
No,
I think okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think it's more like the transformative nature of this,
Sure.
of like what it means going forward.
Because I think like Jason Aaron on Wolverine the X-Men was super good. You have also around that same time period Rick Remender on Uncanny X-Force, which is like killer. Yeah, even like leading up to this, I thought Age of X was like a lot of fun. And it's like unfortunate that I think the discourse about House of X and Power of 10 has kind of diminished the impact of the last 15 years of X-Men storylines, or 18 years of storylines. And a lot of that stuff is completely valid. But that being said, I don't think an X-Men book has hit the mainstream in a way that House and Power have.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Again, like I talked to my brother the other day, we were going through stuff, which I'll share his theory on everything. But what he was saying is like the way that House, especially House, sets up, it ignores kind of everything since Genosha in a way. Like almost all the other stuff.
Yeah,
that has
it
happened
never
to them
mentions Genosha.
Yeah, it mentions it like at one point, but basically anything
The first
between
book.
yeah,
Yeah.
anything between Genosha and now is kind of not really featured.
I think okay, so like, and I think this goes into the official talk of House and Power, is that we kind of actually don't really know what the timetable of this book is, because like I don't know how the end of Uncanny factors into this book, or even how the Age of X ending factors into this book. House of X #1 kind of just drops you in.
Oh, 100%.
And it helps that they have like these
Yeah.
infographics to kind of like ease you into the ideas that they're some planting into this book, but like the idea is that Xavier is now like the him and Magneto are basically running everything on this island of Krakoa that's now become the new nation of mutants.
Yes, which Krakoa, I'm trying to remember how long ago. So it was, I can't remember whose story, like way back in the day, used it. But the last time I remember hearing about it is when they created Vulcan. And like that was where they died. Like Vulcan's team.
The last time like I heard about Krakoa was that he was the landscape to the Jean Grey school during the Jason Aaron run. But like,
Okay.
yeah, the idea is Krakoa is like a Stan Lee, I believe Stan Lee, Jack
Creation.
Kirby creation.
Because I believe it's like one of the first missions he sent. Xavier sends the original team.
Yeah,
is
and that's
Krakoa.
and that's the retcon of Deadly Genesis.
Yes,
Is
that they're
that-
actually the second team.
Yes.
Oh,
and it
really?
just so,
That's
and it just so happens that Cyclops' dickhead brother Vulcan happened to be on that first team.
Is
With-
Vulcan a dickhead?
Oh,
Vulcan's
Vulcan's
major.
Omega dickhead.
Okay, because
Major
the
A+.
Summers are kind of all
Yes.
dickheads.
So yeah, Vulcan is, what is it? Gabriel Summers.
Yeah, his name is Gabriel Summers,
Okay,
So-
and he goes by Vulcan.
Well,
brother of Scott and
Havoc, which I can't remember his name.
I think it's Alex.
Alex.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
But
Yeah, can you imagine if you had a parent and you're like, I'm naming you Scott, Alex, and Gabriel?
well, that's the whole thing. He wasn't named by his parents because he's not really born. Because when Scott and Alex escape and their parents are captured, the mother is pregnant and didn't know it. And so when they're captured by the Shi'ar, they take her and remove Gabriel, and so they name him. And in removing him kills the mom. So he's grown in like a Bacta tank.
Nice.
I believe you because I know next to nothing about Gabriel. Like,
Yes,
I know
So this is. I'll give a quick backstory because he does play into one of the books. So he gets run in like a tank to full maturity when he's like 1, and then he's made a slave until he gets his mutant powers. And
Nice.
so each of the Summers brothers' powers works like Scott's is like solar energy, Havoc's is like radioactive energy, and I can't remember Vulcan's is like cosmic.
Yeah.
So
He runs
he's-
he drains energy from like the cosmos. That's
Yeah.
basically why he was like
He's the
he was
most powerful.
basically he was the strongest one.
Yeah, so he's like the mutant power cosmic. And
Oh, cool.
so that's why he eventually becomes king of the Shi'ar Empire, and then that has to do with the War of the Kings story. And basically it ties in. So at some point he escapes Shi'ar when he was a slave, comes to Earth. Xavier finds him and makes his original team, their retcon, where it's him, Darwin, and then some other character who doesn't matter. She has rock powers. And he sends them to Krakoa, and they get the shit kicked out of them where they're actually dying, and the rock chick sacrifices herself and puts them in like a meteor and shoots them into space. And Vulcans appear. They think he's the only one that survived, but also Darwin survived. And that's where those two characters come from.
Okay.
Is that like it's basically, if you know who the Sentry is, they basically did the exact same idea, but with a pair of X-Men.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so in like this time, like in this world, then Xavier goes, "Oh shit! Well, let me go get his older brother, and I'll make a new team with like a couple more, with like a handful more people."
Well, it's good to know that Scott Summers isn't the only asshole on the team.
No, he's like, I guess in my mind, like Scott's like the Boy Scout, Havoc is like a surfer bro, and then Vulcan is like the biggest like frat boy douchebag you can think of.
Oh, love and hate it.
So, but
Scott did nothing wrong.
well, that's the whole thing. Like,
Just kind of an ass.
I mean, Scott did something wrong when he left his wife and child to go meet up with his ex, who just came back from life.
Well, that's like relations and stuff. I mean, like in general, to like
which wife
the
and
mutant
child?
kind.
Is it the one that he actually had, or is it the one that Sinister cloned,
Scott-
or was it another clone?
Scott left Madeline Pryor and Nathan Christopher Ascani Summers in Anchorage when he heard that Jean Grey came back to life and left them to go hook back up with Jean.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And that's why Madeline Pryor becomes the Goblin Queen.
Oh God.
Which
so let's
I do love the Goblin Queen.
so let's go back to House. So I do love the director's cut that it has all these notes and kind of like if like someone like me who hasn't been reading Marvel in forever, I kind of can catch up well.
Mm-hmm.
When did the director's cut come out?
I think it's the same time. It was just if you got one of the alternate covers of the hard copy, or if you got the digital, all the digital ones were the director's cut.
I can post the director's cut in the group chat if anyone wants to like take a read at it.
Yeah, I just like to see what I missed, honestly, you know?
It's mostly like his side notes explaining like where certain characters are. So like when they're like, oh, we have like, so I think like the humans have one Omega mutant, and then all the rest are
Franklin.
with Franklin, and then all the rest are on Krakoa, and then like 2 of them are like MIA and no one knows where they are.
It's funny about Franklin. It was funny when they referred to Franklin.
Are the 2 MIA ones Braddock and I assume Braddock is one of them.
I don't remember. I know Legion is on Krakoa.
It was Bennett DeParis and Jamie Braddock. They were missing.
Oh, Jamie Braddock. Which is why I think, the idea that what is happening is literal because you have a reality warper who is MIA.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And like there is a lot of things that are confusing though, because it's like, why are some of them wearing these weird costumes? And like,
I want Xavier show his face.
Yeah.
Yeah, Xavier looks like the Maker.
Yeah, I thought that when I read it. I thought like the Maker came back and he was just like creating X-Men to like fight the. I had this weird theory when I first saw like the book. But the weird thing is he's wearing a Cerebro helmet, but he still has to use his hands to read people's mind. It's like weird for me.
Yeah, that is a good point. I didn't catch that.
I mean, yeah. By the way, if people don't know what the Maker is, the Maker is Ultimate Reed Richards from the Reed Richards from the Ultimate Universe, who lost his mind and became a bad guy and started calling himself the Maker.
That was a good storyline of like the Maker coming in.
Yeah, I really like the Maker. I know that some people really don't like what he kind of represents, but
I don't know much about him. I like the idea of the hero swap to villain. That's always kind of a cool thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what's the big deal behind him then? What is it that people don't like?
I mean, he's also like at a point in Ultimate's comics that are not seen as good.
Fair enough.
Yeah, if you look at I'm not sure what page it is, but in the director cut, they have like a list of all the Omega mutants and like their alliances. And if you look down at like Franklin Richards, it's just in bold red, human alliance. He's like still like 7 years old, I think, at the time. So he's just still living with his parents. There was in that book, there was a funny note when like Cyclops meets the Fantastic Four, and he's like, "Hey, you guys can just leave, but tell your son I said hi," and just like walks away.
We're coming.
Oh man, sorry, I missed that for a second. Did you talk about the ambassadors coming and Magneto's response to them?
No, but
so like the entire issue is basically set around Magneto meeting these ambassadors to Krakoa, which is now the new mutant homeland, and basically every mutant has been welcomed as a haven of like this new mutant society, and it's based around Krakoa, and like they set up like very early on that the reason that they're able to do this is that the flowers of Krakoa have 2 properties. Like one of them is you plant them and they and they build like a warp station that will allow people with the mutant gene to enter onto the island of Krakoa. And the other property of the flowers of Krakoa is that it heals any human ailment.
Yeah, well, they said like the mutants came out with 3 pills.
Yeah.
One pill cures any and all mental deformities or issues you would have. I don't know what the right wording is.
I have it right. I have it pulled up. I'm like reading through the director's cut. There was 3 drugs. It was the human drug L, I, and M. The L drug was a flower that produces a drug that extends the human life by like 5 years. The drug I it's a universal antibiotic, a super drug for humans, and then the drug M was the one that cures all diseases of the mind.
Yes.
And like also Xavier with the flowers of like these new like flowers of Krakoa like bought out all the major pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah,
Yes.
like he now has a shadow company.
Yeah, he makes them. I think he said, he bought out a bunch of them, and basically just like the entire infrastructure of like the health system is just null and void now.
Mm-hmm.
But they will only give out the drugs if to countries that
acknowledge them.
Yeah, acknowledge their like sovereignty.
Yeah. So like these diplomats from all these other countries show up on the island Krakoa with Magneto as basically like their guide, and
Magneto and a cuckoo.
Yeah, one of the Stepfords.
Yeah. Which is interesting because they also mentioned that it is currently staffed by, but it will in the future be staffed by other mutants. But all of the cuckoos are who are staffing Krakoa. Because
there's only 3 of them.
No. At one point, I can't remember when. It was when one of them turned on them and there were 2. But what they ended up finding out is that they are actually all clones of Emma Frost. And Sinister made like 100 of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I need backups for backups.
Well, like the idea of the cuckoos being clones of Emma Frost, I thought was like a long-standing thing.
Yes, it was like a confirmed thing. Yeah.
But I think like the idea that Sinister had like 100 of them is a new idea.
Yeah, I can't remember when it was. It was around the time of Messiah Complex.
Okay, because the Stepfords are a Morrison creation, I believe.
Yes, I think it was around the time when they were trying to find Hope when she was an infant.
Okay,
because it was one of the things they found out because it was Sinister was running the Marauders.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that is when somebody like quote unquote killed him at the time. I think it was when Rogue like absorbed like an entire population or something like that.
Rogue hungry.
Yeah, so like
Rogue feed.
Yeah, and I think like so that's how he got like Mystique and Gambit to work for him.
There was a book during like AVX. There was a tie-in of Sinister, and it was basically showing his country that he took over at the center of the earth after he killed all the, I think it was the mole people, and basically,
get them.
Yeah, basically he cloned all of the X-Men and had different purposes. Like he had like 20 Cyclopses hooked up to a machine for a giant energy cannon, as well as like a pack of Wolverines as like his hunting dogs. So it wouldn't be like that far of a stretch if he just had like just Emma Frosts just like roaming around.
Well, that actually ties into, which we'll get to when we talk about Power of 10, like Sinister and cloning like that is a very big part of Power 10.
Yeah.
But first, before we let's finish House of X. Like the big thing is at the end is basically he's just, like Magneto's like, yeah, this is as far as we're gonna show you, and like starts talking, and they're like, oh, what do you mean? It's like, oh, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to her.
Yeah.
And then she's basically like, yeah, I've been reading all of your minds, and this guy can't do this, and this guy brought a gun, and Magneto just like lets out a sigh. He's like, it's for protection, and Magneto's like, from what? Like, what did you think you were gonna do with a gun?
We're gonna hurt you. You're talking to Magneto.
Yeah. And then I love that like Magneto gives this whole grand speech and basically is like, you guys don't get it. We won already. And we're like,
so like, oh yeah, sorry.
Okay, so there are like 2 other major points in this book. even leading up to this. Like, there's one with
there's the side story with
With-
Mystique, Toad, and
This-
Sabretooth.
yeah, which they're like in like some building trying to steal something, and they try to escape. The Fantastic Four show up.
Yeah. Oh,
They're-
what it is, they're in a building that holds all the patents, and when Reed and Tony were both presumed dead or something like that, the U.S.
Yeah, they were
government
up for
seized
grabs.
all their patents. And
Oh,
so
nice.
that is where they were breaking into. Whatever facility held the data of stuff that Reed and Tony Stark have invented.
Yeah. So like they're escaping with some stuff, and Mystique, Toad leave. Sabretooth gets captured by the Fantastic Four. Cyclops shows up. Basically, is like, "Hey, Sabretooth has diplomatic immunity because all mutants have diplomatic immunity now." The Fantastic Four are like, "Yeah, no, he's killed some people. We're gonna keep him." And Cyclops he's like, "Okay, keep Sabretooth. By the way, hey Reed, hopefully we see your son at some point. Hopefully
Yeah.
he's welcome to the island of Krakoa."
Yeah,
Because, hey,
it's
Because
actually like,
Franklin Richards is the mutant.
yeah, he's basically like, oh, how's Franklin doing? And like him and Susan are like taken aback. And it's like, just let him know that whenever he's ready, he has another family here that understand him. And they're just like,
It's like,
Oh.
backhanded. Oh,
Yeah.
And then the other part is a space station that is also funded by Shield and Sword and Hammer and AIM and
every
Hydra.
secret like clandestine organization in the world.
yeah, I thought AIM was
Alpha
bad,
Flight.
but I got
Yes.
at this point I don't know anymore.
AIM is bad.
AIM is actually good because AIM for a while was run by
MODOK?
Sunspot.
Oh, okay. But I think
Um,
there's Hydra agents that are part of it too, isn't there?
Yeah, which are definitely the bad.
Yeah. But I think is one of the people Cassandra, I always forget her last name, like the weird sibling of Xavier.
Cassandra Nova.
It looked like her.
Yeah, I actually forgot House and Power at my work.
Yeah, I don't
And
have
so
them with
it's-
me either. Ryan, if you have it, can you flip to those pages and see if they
In Powers of Axer House.
house? It's when they're like the space part, because I feel like one of them looks like Cassandra Nova.
Oh yeah, I have it right here. I was actually I was rereading through everything on my phone. Let me just pull that page back up.
But yeah, that was the one part of the book that like I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like, so if you could enlighten me, John, that would be amazing.
I actually don't either. Like, I kind of feel like they were just kind of out in space and they were talking about, hey, stuff's kind of like messed up right now, and I kind of completely like forgot about it. But like also the idea that with the Fantastic Four part of the book, they reintroduced the idea of damage control as being an organization that also holds things like artifacts from past superheroes that could be considered dangerous in the hands of people. And so they list out like the things that Damage Control like has currently in their stock, and it's like a bunch of like Iron Man costumes.
That's
like,
who
some
they
other
were
things.
robbing. Yeah, and how when
I have the page up from the director's cut. It was the facility was built out of like a celestial head, but it was combined with the efforts of AIM, Shield, Strike, Sword, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Armor, and Hydra.
Oh, see, I thought that was like Galactus's head or something.
No,
It's master,
basic.
I thought it was Master Mold for a second.
which is funny because doesn't that tie into stuff in the Power of 10 Master Mold? But I'm trying to think. So House of X, I'm trying to think of how it ends with Magneto's speech, which the guy is basically like, "Do you know what you sound like?" And he's like, "Yeah, God." But do you know what the guy is actually referencing?
No.
That he sounds like Hitler.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. He does sound.
And
he's
of
got
all
full
characters,
fascist
it's
mode.
it's Magneto saying it, the character who's most tied to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing though, and I feel like this is like a big, massive discourse within comics Twitter right now, is that the idea that you look at the X-Men and how they position themselves within Krakoa, and like the idea is like, well, we're just taking what we're owed, and people view that as a villainous thing. And I'm like, well, like look at like the last like 40 years of like X-Men like storylines. You know, it's like they're killed and murdered and beaten and whatever because of like not of the power they possess, but of like who they are, because of like like the predecessors,
Successors.
The prejudices.
Of like who they are because of the mutant X gene. And it's just like, well, like they're just finding their own place, and they're basically asserting their dominance. And I don't necessarily think that's I think it's a little villainous, but they're at least kind of like, well, maybe this is what we have to do now.
Two things. One, John, you're right. They are in the head of Master Mold, not a Celestial.
Right.
The character who I thought looked like Cassandra is Omega Sentinel. Because they gave her like the shaved head thing. And one of the things I wanted to point out before we move on, I'm trying to remember. It's actually like one of the first pages of it. And this is where like my brother's theory, I think, has, which I'll get into in a second. It's the first page has like these weird pods under a tree. Xavier with his helmet, people busting out of those pods. The first
like
two,
some Matrix pods.
yes, are a red-headed woman and then a brunette man. The man picks his head up and his eyes are glowing red.
Yeah, I thought that was sinister as well.
And then Xavier like touches his like under his chin and then says, "To me, my X-Men." And this is where like, are some of these people clones? And there's in the panel there's like a ton of these pods.
Okay, so it's a red-headed woman and a brown-headed guy with
it's definitely
glowing red eyes.
It's Jean and Cyclops.
So is the reveal is the guy that people think is Xavier underneath his hood or like this helmet actually fucking Mr. Sinister? Which then goes into the power of 10.
Exactly, because the power of 10 leads like a lot of stuff. Because Sinister, if you haven't read the director's cut of that, a lot of the information about everything is that
they use his Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Are you talking about like those interpanels that talk about like betrayal and everything? Okay, yeah, I did get
that's the director's cut stuff.
Okay, yeah, so I did get all that.
In one of those panels, so power of 10 works where what's it like year 1, year 100, year 1000. So year 1 is like Xavier walking.
It's year 0, year 10, year 100, year 1000.
Okay, so year 0 is Xavier at a school and like some woman walks up to him. Then
it's
like Moira, okay. And then year 10 is the original team, I think, right?
Yes, it's kind of like where House of X is. Yeah. At least that's what I take from the situation.
Year 100 is the weird kind of Days of Future Past future that we see, where we see the Rasputin, we see the Red Nightcrawler character, and Crimson, and there's like 2 other ones. And then year 1000 is, and we also see in year 100 what, Nimrod?
Yeah, Nimrod, who's a lot different than the other Nimrods we've seen.
Yeah.
And then in year 1000, we have like Nimrod, who's like a ghost from
Destiny.
Destiny looking thing with like a blue hair, like a blue like mutant alien robot thing. And so what they explain is that the year 100, so the mutants that we see, the Nightcrawler looking guy and the Rasputin, are part of a genetic program that the mutants created. So the mutants only live at that point in 2 places.
Not just the mutants have created.
Sinister created. But he working with the mutants, and there was I think they said 4 generations.
Yes.
So generation 1 was like okay, but they didn't really do a lot, and they combined powers of people. Generation 2 is like the ones that we see, and they're like the ones that like worked really well, but then every once in a while there's like ones that literally have like no ability to fight, like they just won't, which is where we get the Crimson guy who like just won't fight. And then 3 was kind of similar but better, and then the 4th gen he had planned, and they're just basically completely useless, and then they actually like commit mass suicide and take out like what they say like 80% of the mutant population.
Yeah, they blow up New Krakoa.
Yeah, and then he flips sides at some point and creates the hounds for the human. Because there's 3 sides. It's the mutants, the humans, and robots.
Yeah.
And so he creates the hounds breeding program, and then the humans like basically William Wallace him.
Yeah, they pull him apart.
Which, like, do you guys know about the hounds?
Yes, that's like an old school Sinister thing.
Yeah. It's an old school like Ahab thing. Because Ahab had like the hounds that would like search for mutants and like
they were
kill
like
them.
Mutants bred to hunt mutants.
Yeah. The hounds of Ahab.
Yeah, so we see one in the issue, which is the girl who gets then put in the bath. Like, I don't know, she gets like downloaded and put on ice.
Yeah, well, downloaded is a good way of putting it.
Because then she pops back up in the 1000 year.
Yeah, but as like a mold or whatever.
But yeah, like, I don't know, the Power of X thing is like so all over the place and confusing, but it leads more to like...
So the Power of X also starts off with like Moira McTaggart like meeting Xavier on a park bench, and Xavier not knowing who she is, but Moira knowing everything about him. And then like that goes, like that shit is like wild, because I am also like halfway into like the current issue of House of X that comes out tomorrow, and like this I think is going to be a series that like as you read the newest issue, you're gonna like go back to the past issues and reread them and just be like, oh, like this is what they were referencing, or like this is what they were getting at. So I think like a lot of people whose trepidation about like this comic where they're like sowing these seeds of ideas and you're not really sure where they're gonna go, or they just come out of nowhere, like are actually things that are being built to greater ideas.
Oh, and 100%. That's where I think like Morrison comparisons are very good here, because it is, especially with Power of 10, like it is super weird. It's all over the place, but I do think it's all going to come back and connect. Because like you said, it definitely seems like Moira, because I'm like looking through the issue, and she's like, why don't you just read my mind, and then you'll see. And then he reads and he's like, oh shit. Like his eyes are like, yeah, but it's like she is not the real, either she's not the real Moira, or her mind is not that era Moira. She's from the future or something.
Or is she?
Yes.
She's doing that Days of Future Past thing where Kitty Pryde sends her brain back in time or whatever.
Yeah, the one thing we do get as I'm looking is this is where we get the conclusion to the Mystique Toad thing from House of X.
They stole a sweet ass USB. That's what they did.
Yeah, and they walk and they hand it to Magneto, and he's like, she's like, you can have this, but like, you got to give me stuff. And he's like, yeah, well, she's like, I have other demands. And then Xavier walks in and he's like, what about helping your fellow mutant? Isn't that enough reward? And she's like, no.
I have demands.
And he's like, oh, I see. That's fine. But we also have further demands. And she's like, really? And then he just like telekinetically rips the USB from her. He's like, yep.
Yep. And then he puts it inside of a flower.
Yeah, but then he also, his words at the end, because she basically throws his words back and it's like, isn't helping your fellow mutant. He's like, we're building a better world, and everyone who would live in it owes something.
Yeah.
And they the something is bold, so it's definitely very
ominous.
The thing that I noticed, like, when did Xavier become telekinetic?
he's always been telekinetic. Just he's been like very shitty at it. I feel like him and Jean are like the flip flop of each other. Like,
I
he's much
never.
more- I feel like it's always like he's always had some telekinetic abilities, but not much.
I thought he was just like a telepath, like just the strongest telepath.
Mhm.
I think it's like if you're a telepath, you can also read people's minds.
Well, I think he means like being able to pull the USB, the telekinetic part.
Yeah, like telekinesis.
I feel like he's always had that. It's just been not his strong suit.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think he would make himself walk or like do something else. 'Cause this is like the first time I've ever seen him like pull something with his mind. And I read a lot of X-Men.
I don't remember. I always thought it was just part of his thing. I'm looking at like the Marvel database to see what they say his power set is.
Because I could have sworn it was only like telepathy.
Yeah, no. As far as I can see, I just always imagined he was the type of dude who just didn't use it because he didn't need it.
Well, he's in a wheelchair. You would think he would like grab something.
Yeah, but he could also get like a walking machine from Tony Stark.
Maybe he just likes people like waiting on him.
Yeah. Maybe it's just like maybe he's one of those guys who's always late to events, and he just needed to finally have an excuse for it.
I don't know. He could have walked like 10 feet to get that USB drive. He's walking now. You think he would use it?
Well,
Hey, I'm flipping through it. So in the future, we see one Hound and 3 of those mutants. One of them is dead, and he resembles. I can't remember. I could heal people. I can't remember what his name is. He was There are amalgams of characters, but the one that's dead is like one of the New Mutants, like the healer one. And then the one is they call Rasputin, and she has like the power sets of she has the steel skin of Colossus. She definitely has the teleporting, and she has like the sword of magic.
Yeah, and there's like one of the a Hickman like info dump pages has like an
genetic breakdown.
Genetic breakdown of like what makes up that character.
Yeah, so the Rasputin one, it's like Rasputin, Bane, Pride, and Kinney. And Choir. And I don't know who Choir, Bane, and Kinney are offhand.
Laura Kinney, X-23.
Okay.
Oh, no way.
So she has a healing factor, she can move through walls, she has the steel skin. Who's Bane and Choir?
Quentin Choir. Kid Omega.
Okay.
He's Quentin Choir. He's like the pink-haired kid who is also like an Omega level telepath, like Jean Grey.
Okay, so she's a telepath. Who the fuck is Bane?
Bane.
Bain.
Bane.
And it says like, so under power it says FOFLD. So Choir it says Telly. Rasputin it says Metallum.
I wish I had that book on me. I'm sorry. It's Eudes the Untouchable. Basically, he can create force fields around him.
Oh, okay. That makes sense because we see her do that.
Yeah, Eunice is like very like first member of the Brotherhood of Mutants. He actually dies within like the first couple issues of X-Men because like he creates like the force field around him and he accidentally kills himself.
Oh wow. Yeah, because the other guy here, we don't get the profile on, but he's a teleporter, and he looks like Nightcrawler, except he's red. Like, I can't remember Nightcrawler's father's name.
Azrael.
Yeah.
Azrael.
But like, yeah, it says, I'm looking at it now, like, so Sinister had a breeding program, and there were failure rates. every generation, chimeras had outliers. So the first gen had 0.3, the second gen had 1.2, the third had 9.4, and the fourth one was 62.3%. And the passives, which were like had peacetime power sets, they're called the cardinal.
Okay.
Yeah, and the quote in here is, "The nature of that man sinister reaches far beyond any hope of redemption. There can be no salvation for the devil himself. And the sinister was publicly executed by the man-machine supremacy after defecting." And then that's when we see, so we have like Nimrod and the red woman, who are like, she looks like she's an Omega Sentinel to some degree. She has similar designs. And this Nimrod, he's like childlike, isn't he?
He's like, I'm sorry, bro. Like, I'm sorry I have to do this to you, but you know, it is how it is.
Yeah.
This is war. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's almost like he's like, I'm sorry that the other versions of me were so shitty. They shouldn't have bred you for this. Like, it's real weird. And then the humans are like subservient to them.
Yeah.
He's like an apologetic teenager who can't really disobey his parents.
Mm-hmm. Because it's him, yeah. And then there's like a female cyborg person.
Yeah,
I think she's very much like Omega Sentinel, where she has like cybernetic arms, but like her head and body look human. And then,
like Spiral.
Yes,
Which, by the way, if like all this stuff is like happening with the X-Men and like all this other stuff, like what is also happening, I assume, in the Mojoverse?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't imagine you have like this big X-Men storyline and not involve Mojo in any way.
Well, it's still like issue 1. There's still time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, totally. I'm just saying that as like, hey, like, don't forget about that fat horror show.
Yeah. So I guess in the Powers of X, the other thing we learned, so that there's only mutants live on 2 places left. It's I don't know what you would call they live either in the Shi'ar Empire as basically slave breeding stock to become,
which is like really fucked, because like, you know, you'd like to think that the Shi'ar and the mutants have like a good rapport.
Yeah, it's like they explain it really weird because they're basically bred to be warriors. It's kind of like,
no, they're bred to be warrior guardsmen, basically.
Yes.
So they're like, think of like Spartans, just Spartans, just with mutants.
Yeah. So if you're like
underneath
an
another race,
to be what Gladiator was.
Yeah.
To the Shi'ar. But there's also part of it where they think that if the Shi'ar conquer the Sol system, that's why they've been keeping the mutants, to kind of use them to kind of be okay to conquer it, and then there'll be like better things. But then the other place they live, which is saying a lot, which is Asteroid K,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a population of 8, which we see 6. So we see the Rasputin, the Nightcrawler dude, and then 4 other characters, which appear to be Wolverine, who's old and gruff, a Magneto in a green costume, and then I don't know who these other 2 are.
Yeah, I didn't know who Groot was either. Yeah,
there's like a tree guy that looks like Groot, but they're saying he's a mutant, and then the other one looks like a DC character called Hellspawn.
The idea that the tree person might be Black Tom Cassidy.
Oh, that makes sense.
Man, that's really cool.
That's interesting. I didn't even think of that.
There were 3 places where the mutants were. There was Benevolence, Chandelar, and Asteroid K.
Yeah. Well, the 2 are part of the Shi'ar Empire.
Yeah.
But like the one, so none of us know who like the Ghost Rider ape guy is, right?
Nope.
Are you in? Is it House or Powers?
Yeah, I'm looking at Powers right now. Powers of 10. It is on page.
If someone wants to also print up that page, like that'd be great, because again, sorry, I forgot my comic at work.
Yeah, I'll pull up a screenshot. Let me just find
Here, I
the
got it.
page.
So there's like that weird kind of magic-y Ghost Rider looking dude. That's what I was saying. He looks like Hellspawn from DC. Like I don't know what else
Oh,
he.
that's Zorn.
Oh my god, are they really?
I mean, that's Zorn's helmet.
Is it?
Who is
Uh,
who?
I mean, like,
It depends on which.
I
which
think
time you're-
I think it looks like Zorn.
Zorn's like a really weird character because it's a Morrison creation that then got turned into something else. Because he's
Oh.
originally Magneto, but then there was like 2 other Zorns that were twins.
Okay.
So yeah, so Zorn, there's Zorn,
Zorn.
and it's like,
All right.
and then it's revealed that Zorn is actually Magneto, and
Okay.
then Magneto goes crazy, kills a bunch of people, Magneto dies, and then it's revealed that Zorn, Kuai Yen, was actually Magneto and died, like pretended to be Magneto and died, and then Shen Zorn shows up, and that's the twin brother of Kuai Yen.
And they're psychics, I think. So he like projected Magneto's visage on him.
Kuai
Something
Yen,
like that. Because the second and
Kuai-
third one are not Morrison guys.
because Kuai Yen has, like, his mutant ability, he has a sun in his head.
Okay.
He has healing powers, teleportation, gravity manipulation, telepathy, can cause, like, a sun to turn into a black hole. That's his powers. And then Shen Zorn, his brother, who's, like, currently, like, kind of, like, kicking about in the current Marvel U, he has a black hole in his head, has healing powers, teleportation, gravity manipulation, telepathy, basically, like, everything his brother has, except for instead of a sun, it's a black hole.
And he's a bad guy, I think, right?
I think Shen Zorn is currently a good guy.
Okay. The first one was a bad guy. For sure,
Yeah.
though.
Kuan Yin is a bad guy. Shen Zorn is a good guy.
And again, so this all started with Morrison's New Mutants run, and it was Magneto. And then I
Yeah.
can't remember who took it over, turned it into this other thing.
Like
But yeah, you're
liter-
right. That looks like the mask.
like literally, Morrison wrote that that the Kuan Yin Zorn was actually Magneto. Magneto destroys the bridge, like that big, like kind of famous moment, dies, and then within like 6 weeks, like Marvel retconned it to where Magneto actually like wasn't that guy, and that was in fact
Because they didn't want to have
actually-
Magneto dead, basically.
Yeah. Which it was like, I mean, of all of like the Grant Morrison retcons to happen to his long running runs, like his run on X-Men is the quickest.
Oh, yeah. But like, yeah, you're right. It does look like the same mask, which would be real interesting if it's Zorn.
I
don't
mean,
know.
like what's the shelf life of a guy who has a black hole in his head?
But
I mean,
this Zorn has like,
theoretically or literally?
could he have Ghost Rider in him? Because like, why does he have like a Ghost Rider head?
I don't know. But I
From
mean,
what it
that's
looks
totally-
like, that blue flame looks like Franklin Richards just like power cosmic. Like if you ever read like
Oh.
Franklin Richards book, you would see like that blue like ghastly flame like around
Maybe
him.
it's-
Interesting.
Maybe it's
Which-
Franklin wearing a helmet.
which,
Wearing
by the
Ghost
way,
Rider.
like I mean, like I don't think that they would drop Franklin
For
then-
nothing.
yeah, that Omega list, and then have like that entire interaction with the Fantastic Four for nothing.
Oh, I have the panel on my phone I could read of like when Scott's talking to. He's talking directly to Susan, and it is awesome because she basically goes from house. Like she goes like, "This amnesty, the other things Xavier's doing. What are all of you thinking?" And he's basically responds, "My family has spent our entire lives being hunted and hated. The world has told me that I was less when I knew I was more. Did you honestly think that we were going to sit around forever and just take it?" And then Susan's like, of course not, but and he gets his response. It's really very simple, Susan. I believe in what Charles Xavier's doing. Please greet your son for me and tell him that when he's ready, he has family in Krakoa waiting for him. And just
Such a like backhanded comment. I love it.
Yeah, but it's also to like tell them it's like, yeah, we know about Franklin. Like everybody knows about Franklin, but he's actually one of us. No matter what you think or try to perpetuate.
He's not like the power cosmic like you guys. He's one of us.
Well, he's like God. Like he's past Omega. He's like God level mutant because
yeah, we talked about it in the chat last week.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants.
And we just
have to create whole realities.
He is the last surviving being out of the universe after it ends. As he.
Yeah, that actually reminds me. If you read, because it came out the same day as House of X, is the first issue of History of the Marvel Universe.
Okay.
It is Galactus telling Franklin the history of the Marvel Universe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm Trey waiting for that, by the way.
I loved it. It ends, the first issue ends with kind of the Wolverine origins.
Cool.
And it goes through the entire thing. I was like, oh, this makes so, like, especially if you would like, for like some of the new movie stuff coming out, like we joked about the Eternals. I'm like, oh, I actually know who the Eternals are now.
Oh, really? That's kind of cool. Okay, I'll check that out when I get a...
So I have a list of the things that were in the place that Sabretooth, Mystique, and Toad were stealing. So they have Soul's Anvil, Soul's Hammer, the Bridge, Iron Man Mark 5, 6, 7, 8, Rescue Mark 1 and 2, Anti-Proton Sling, and Multiversal Beacon.
What do they need that weird shit for?
And specifically, they have highlighted the Soul's Hammer, SOLS Hammer, like Soul's like hammer. So I don't know what that item is. And then I'm trying to find the list they have of like the Omega mutants. Oh, here they are.
That's on the other one.
So Jamie Braddock is none. Robert Drake, Iceman, is Krakoa. Joshua Foley, who's Elixir. That's who I was thinking of. Elixir's one.
Which I didn't know Elixir was still alive. I thought Elixir was still dead.
Yeah. So Elixir is the one I was thinking of. That other mutant that we saw that was dead, it looks like Elixir. He's Krakoa. Jean Grey, Marvel Girls Krakoa. David Heller, he's Legion, he's unknown. Eric Lencher, Magneto, Krakoa, Kevin McTaggart, Proteus. Okay, so that's why I got mixed up. So one of Professor X's bastards is on Krakoa, and the other one is not. Absalon Mercator, Mr. M, is unknown. I don't know who that is. Is that Mr. Molecule?
No, there was another character. I thought I may be thinking of someone else, but he had like reality warping abilities as well. But it was only on things he was able to touch. So he was like, is that the reality warper one that you're reading? Because if I may be off then, if that's not the right one.
It says matter manipulation.
Yeah, he's like a more lame version of Mad Jim Jaspers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of, Mad Jim.
Storm is on Krakoa. Exodus is, they don't know. Kid Omega's Krakoa. Franklin Richards, which I love his, is like reality manipulation universal.
Yeah, they know.
Well, they have like Jamie Braddock as reality manipulation quantum, and Proteus is reality manipulation sonic, and he's like he's usually a villain, which is interesting that he's on Krakoa. And
but what's the? I feel like what's the difference between Sonic?
Well, Psionic.
Sonic.
What's the difference between Sonic the Hedgehog and Shadow?
I guess Psionic. I guess I don't know, because I always thought Proteus can like reshape the world, but I guess it's like how he's doing. He's doing it like with psychic abilities, as opposed to like Jamie Braddock's like quantum power set, or Franklin's like universal.
Well, I feel like universal, because it's using the word universal. It's like much greater, but like I don't know like what the step below.
I feel like Franklin uses the power cosmic to change reality. I don't know. And then the other two Omega levels are Gabriel Summers. It's just energy manipulation. I didn't know that they counted Vulcan as an Omega level. And then Hope Summers is also on Krakoa. So nice that she gets a shout out.
Well, if they wanted to just like deal with Franklin, just send out Hope. Just put her like within like 30 feet, and there you go. You got another one.
Yeah. So
yeah.
And then no, go ahead, Sean.
Oh no, it's like really funny because it's like talking about like reality warpers and stuff. I feel because I like not to side tangent, but I recently just ended my watch through of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind.
Ooh, I would love to talk about that.
And like the villain and the episode's already like so far, so like we'll probably save it for later.
Yeah,
but like the idea of people who manipulate time, and so it's just like, so when you're talking about universal or psionic, I'm thinking of like time manipulators. I'm like, okay, are they a Dio? Are they a Kira? Are they a King Crimson?
Or Epitaph?
Well, Epitaph doesn't have time travel powers. It's King Crimson who has time travel powers.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. No, I just wanted to add a single small meme in that. You please take it away.
Yeah, I mean that's all I kind of like wanted to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're in JoJo brain, like the rest of us. We're all waiting for part 6.
Yeah, which is like about 2 years away.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we got Fire Force. That'll keep me occupied for the time being.
I had a theory on like the whole X like run. I thought it was more like Mr. Sinister like taking over Xavier and like feeling bad at what he's done to mutants and just like trying to help him out, because it kind of like makes sense at the what is it, Powers of X, like the blue guy at the very end who they don't really refer to. Like I kind of have a feeling that he's like Sinister, just basically evolved to the end of his like at the end of his step. I think the end of the stage, because the way he like talks, as well as like the monologue that he's doing, like reminds me of Mr. Sinister like a lot.
Yeah, there's like some things. So, to get to like I put in the chat like before, like my brother's theory was that like all of these mutants that we're seeing, besides like a handful, maybe like Magneto, Mystique, the ones that seem to be kind of more moving on their own, as opposed to. Was it Rachel that was the one bringing that one kid around, or was that Hope?
I think it may have been Hope.
I thought that was Jean.
Was it Jean? I don't remember. So many redheads in this book.
Because at the end of House of X, you see that beginning panel of like the beginning of Powers of X, like when he's in that tree with the light and like the two beings like coming out. At the end of House of X, you see that same panel, but from like a different point of view.
Yeah, it is Jean. It's Jean, her like 60s costume. But like that goes, like my brother's thinking that like these are all Sinister's clones, because the ones that we see, especially Jean and Cyclops in that beginning thing, he has always had an obsession with them. Like for forever, with those two characters specifically. And for that to be like the first panel to be what appears to be like an Adam and Eve of Jean and Scott would make a lot of sense for Sinister to do. So it would be interesting to see like, did Sinister move his mind into Xavier, or did he somehow create a Cerebro that allows him to mimic Xavier's powers or something, to like mimic them? I think there's a lot of interesting places this can go.
I'm really excited for this book. I also really dug like Magneto's monologue, like to the ambassadors. I know we're coming bouncing around back to that, but like he's basically like, it's about time I get to say these words. And I was like excited for an X-Men book again.
Yeah,
like that made my day.
Yeah, I have that page pulled up, and he's like, "Some would be offended at a wolf presenting as a sheep, but I have learned hard lessons from your kind, so I know the truth. You're all wolves." It's like, and it's good that you're here, all of you, as you really are.
I mean, like, and that's kind of always been like the motivation of, Eric, the man, Magneto, the mutant, is that he is a Holocaust survivor. He has seen, one of the absolute worst faces of humanity, and he knows what that worst version of humanity is capable of. So it's like, for him to basically be the leader of his own mutant nation, basically leading mutant kind into a new millennia, and protecting them, against, people who don't have their best interests at heart. Him saying like, we're the new leaders of the Earth is like, hey, Magneto's got some valid points, yo.
Yeah. It's very good because like this is like the first time that you see like Xavier team up with Magneto on something like this, which is very like unique and very well deserved and about time because Xavier can only be a pacifist for so much, especially after oh man, what was that run when Kitty Pryde takes over that like the was it like New Mexico for like the mutants? They have that tiny bit of land and they make their own country. That was when Jean Grey was like the bad guy with those two mutants that you said had the sun in the black hole. Like Jean Grey, yeah, the Zorns. They were in there as well.
Okay, just so when I said like I had to look up what Soul's Hammer is. Okay, if this is in play, this is something really interesting. So Soul's Hammer is a Dyson sphere built by Tony Stark. So it's basically like a giant solar panel thing that absorbs the sun's energy and then can turn it into a weapon. The last time it was used to defend when the Shi'ar attempted to destroy the Earth. It has the power to destroy an entire planet when it's only charged at 2%.
Spaghetti-O.
There are several characters who put out solar energy, like a Cyclops, that could charge this thing on their own.
Yep. And use that for bad.
I thought Cyclops' beam was like a physical blast. It wasn't like a heat beam, though.
It's like a concussive blast.
Yeah, it was concussive.
Solar energy. I thought his stuff was because at some point when they jump into the future, like he doesn't even have to eat. He just like lives off of like absorbing solar energy.
Well, he does absorb solar energy, but like he doesn't put out solar energy.
Like the idea that his beams that come from his eyes are concussive. Like they don't. Okay. They're not like a laser. They don't eat away at things. It's basically like, it's like if you're
it's like hard light.
If his laser like hits you, it's like being hit by a truck.
Okay, so it's like a Green Lantern ring, like a construct kind.
Yeah, it's like a hard light. It's like a hard light beam.
My other part that it's like my last thing, kind of to like go on is like the kind of opening kind of director's thing that they showed. Is that like the kind of explanation of what the Genoshan thing actually did and didn't do, and with like the whole. Basically, all the Genosha did was kind of give humanity like a couple of more years of supremacy, because like the mutant gene had like spread across that much of like the planet at that point.
I think that's such a cool little thing.
Sure, yeah. but from what we've seen of Power of 10 is that the Age of Mutant is not too long for that world.
No,
because Sinister portrays them. Somehow Nimrod gets involved, and the Sentinels get involved, and the island nation of Krakoa does not survive.
No, he destroys it. Which I have like the map thing. So there's 12 places on Krakoa, and it is kind of northeast of Australia. It's in like the South Pacific, but
which should be funny. The X-Men are not strangers to the Australian part of the world.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's the House of X, there's House of M, the Arbor Magna Arena, Academos Habitat, Transit, the Oracle, the Grove, the Cradle, the Reservoir, the Wild Hunt, and the Carousel.
Ooh, I have a question. Why didn't they just move to like the Savage Land and just like build a giant shield? Because no one goes to the Savage Land. They would have just stayed hidden for like a few hundred years, and no one would have known they were there.
I think
too many
because
planes fall there.
they also, it's like, why should they? I think is like the big part of this.
Too many dinosaurs also. They gotta deal with
Well-
Sauron, like, messing with them every once in a while.
I don't like that we live in a world where we can say too many dinosaurs is a problem.
Yeah.
Well, but they do plant one of the things in the Savage Land because that's one of the panels.
Yeah.
Yeah, they brought that up in the first book.
Yeah, I'm looking through. So, like, the first arm we see is Colossus planting a flower. Then we see Storm. Somebody, I think it's Nightcrawler based on the hands. Armor. And then I don't know who this is in the Savage Land. They have pointy ears. Maybe it's Caliban. And then we see Kitty Pryde and Lockheed. Is like planting a flower in DC. And then what appears to be a bunch.
All the Krakoa flowers.
Yeah, and then a couple of the cuckoos. It looks like 3 of them, 2 or 3 of them planting them somewhere else. So, yeah, I think this is Caliban. He's the only one that kind of fits. It's that first panel in the Savage Land. I don't know who else would look like that. Maybe Beast. But I don't know. Is there any other things we want to talk about with this? Like, I'm very excited because I have not been excited for a Marvel thing, let alone an X-Men thing in forever.
Yeah, me too. Like I was never a fan of X-Men, but this is definitely getting me very excited for an X-Men future.
Yeah, as someone who is like, who I feel like is like the Marvel guy of the podcast, because I mean, like, I feel like I'm the only one that reads Marvel, you know, and liking a lot of like what Marvel's been doing recently. Like, I thought War of Realms was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and
It's definitely, that is something I will pick up eventually.
And
yeah.
I mean, like, another book I picked up, like, basically I picked up like 2 books last week, and one of them was Runaways, which I think is still like one of the best books that's on the market right now. Looking at, you know, the current landscape of Marvel right now, like, I'm very excited for, you know, the X-Men books. Like, X-Men is like one of my favorite properties. I'm really excited to, you know, hopefully, you know, people are excited now as they are like 6 months from now for the X-Men stuff. So,
Well, it's a pretty short run because it's 2 6-issue miniseries.
Yep.
So it's really like
it's 12 books.
It's 12
And
books, and it's like every other week.
They're trading. So it's basically a 3-month-long storyline.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, the next issue comes out tomorrow.
Yeah,
Which
I'm
I have on my
excited.
desk right now.
What?
How is it?
I'm
Is it worth it?
I'm about quarter through right now. It's pretty buck wild.
Okay,
Like-
cool. I guess I gotta pick that up tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. So I think that kind of just about does it for everything. Yeah, so I guess quick round of plugs for everyone.
Yeah, sounds good.
You want to kick us off, Connor?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at maybe Connor. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Question Connor. And I occasionally write words at thelostharo.wordpress.com. I feel like that's kind of seared into my brain at this point. I can't screw it up anymore, even if I tried. And that's it. So that's where you can find me on the internet.
John?
You can find me at John JOHN _FN _Seiler SEILER on Twitter, where you can see me talk about you know, comics and games and like other bullshit. I'm also like help out on a comics podcast or animation podcast called Legion of Tunes, Not really sure when we'll record next, but there are
Yeah.
definitely plans maybe for that at some point.
Yeah, we have to do that soon. So
Oh, by the way, I also forgot. Like one more thing. I didn't realize that comic shops were or like Marvel was doing this, but when I picked up my comics today, my comic book guy was like, "Oh, hey, I forgot to give you these like last week," and he handed me 2 seed packets.
I didn't get that.
And it's like for people who bought the first issues of Power and House of X, and they're basically like the seeds of Krakoa.
I'm really mad I did not get those.
So I'm going to plant them and see if I get a portal somewhere.
Yeah, but they'll only let you through if you're a mutant.
Hey,
Well, that's round 2. You gotta hope you're a mutant.
Yeah, you miss the 1,000. All the shots you don't take, man.
Exactly.
Mhm. All right. So yeah, that Toon podcast that I'm also in. Check out. Also on this stream, you have Smallville Chronicles, which me and Alan just recorded the next episode today. So that'll be out this week, or should already be out. And then
Depending on when schedules are.
Yes, and check out all the other shows. We've been covering Legion, which is one of the craziest shows in existence in its final season that I love. And there's been some After Dark, so don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Check out all the other awesome stuff at Los Horo. There's a bunch of other podcasts, people that write stuff like Connor. And yeah, again, tell a friend. And we will check you guys next time. Adios.
I love you all. Quietly, though.
People tell you it's that Power of X. They're a bunch of posers. It's Power 10.
I thought you were going to drop a normal joke at the end here.
Oh god, I hate normal.
Are we going to send her to Krakoa?
Yeah, no, definitely.
She's not good enough to go to Krakoa.
Welcome to the Phantom Zone.
And now, comics.